with us the executive director, the American Red Cross Southeast Minnesota chapter. We have with us on the phone from Rochester, which is the headquarters of the Southeast Minnesota Red Cross. Did I get all that right there, Melanie?
You got it. That's right.
Melanie Tschida is our guest. How long have you been the head honcho of the Red Cross in Southeast Minnesota?
I have been very fortunate to have had a great career with the Red Cross so far. So I've actually been the director for about 11 years.
Cool. Now, a couple of years ago, you know, the Red Cross had an office here in Faribault.
Yes.
And it was closed along with a number of others and consolidated into Rochester, I'm assuming to save some dollars, right?
Yes, that's part of a whole organizational restructuring that we went through, where a lot of our smaller one-county and two-county offices were closed, and we adopted a structure where a chapter such as mine has, you know, one office in Rochester and serves all, in our case, all of the 12 counties that are part of southeast Minnesota.
Is that a problem?
So that happened.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. That happened throughout the organization. So in Minnesota, we went from having 12 chapters to having 5, and that's pretty consistent in size and capacity with what the other chapters now are consisting of throughout the organization.
Has that posed any problems, or has it gone pretty smoothly?
Well, any change that significant is going to have its own set of challenges. So I would like to think we're through the hardest part, which was really where we had individuals who had been part of our paid staff who were laid off in that process, and that was extremely difficult for all of us. And we had buildings that we vacated, which was also very difficult. So it certainly had its challenges. I think we tried to allow people time to, you know, be mad at the Red Cross, or to be mad at the need to make these changes, and to kind of, you know, go through almost like a grieving process. You know, I miss the people I worked with. I miss the office that I was familiar with. So we've tried to allow people time and space to do that. But really, when it comes down to it, the Red Cross mission hasn't changed. We're still working hard to try to prevent and alleviate human suffering, and most of the time that means providing relief for disasters and helping people be prepared for first aid emergencies and making sure there's a safe blood supply. The mission is really what drew many of our volunteers to us in the first place, and it's what has kept many of them with us through these changes. And we're now at a point where we're really trying to recruit new folks who come to us with the passion for that mission, who don't necessarily have all the history of what our office structure used to look like, and can, you know, really help us serve our communities. That's what we hope our volunteers are really focused on doing, is being the Red Cross for us in the communities, and helping us respond and provide service when their neighbors and friends are the ones who need help.
We only have a little bit over a minute before we have a market update, so it would probably take more than a minute to talk about your mission, because you are you do so many different things. But correct me if I'm wrong, the Red Cross was mandated by Congress, and it's not funded at all by Congress, right?
That's correct. Yes, you are very knowledgeable to know that. Yes, we have a requirement to respond to disasters and provide services to military personnel and their families. But both of those two required services do not come with any tax dollars or government funding to make them happen. So we do require or rely on community support to help make those services possible.
So talk about a big unfunded mandate. There's one right there.
Yes. The original. We say it's the original.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, Melanie. Stick around. We're going to about 2 or 3 minutes market update, and then I'll come right back to you, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Melanie Tschida is our guest. She's the executive director of the Southeast Minnesota chapter, the American Red Cross. Let's get that opening market report, a service of your KDHL Agri-Boosters.
Cattle and soybeans are higher, hogs are mixed, and corn is lower. I'm John Perkins.
Hey, in Minnesota today, Melanie Tschida is our guest. Tomorrow, by the way, some folks from AAUW will be in. They're doing a Halloween breakfast, which sounds delicious. They're going to have maple bacon, cheesy eggs. Oh boy, I'm making myself hungry even thinking about this. He'll be in studio to tell us about this Halloween breakfast. October the 30th is the breakfast of the Faribault American Legion. Melanie wants to come over for that, don't you, Melanie?
It sounds tempting.
And Dr. Munsch from the Orthopedic and Fracture Clinic will be with us on Wednesday, and we'll take your questions, too. Love to have you email questions, or I should say text them. Text your questions to 507-838-5233. We find it to be the best way to get questions on the air. It helps the flow of the program, and so we'd appreciate you doing that. By the way, if you have a question of Melanie today, too, you can text us at 507-838-5233, 507-838-5233. Before the market update, Melanie, we were talking about the fact that you were, of course, given a mission by Congress to do this, and they're not receiving any funding from Congress for doing this, so you depend a lot on us to send you money, right?
We do. We rely on contributions from the communities that we are serving. So we do look at opportunities when they arise with corporations and foundations and large organizations. Certainly, we're fortunate here in Minnesota that we have a number of headquarters of large companies, and they're very good supporters of the Red Cross, and that's great. We appreciate that, but we also ask for contributions from the public throughout the year to help support the services that we provide. And if it's $10 or $25, that makes a big difference when a lot of people contribute. So
definitely. No, you do blood drives, of course. Everybody knows that. You do swimming lessons.
We do.
You also contact military personnel overseas when their loved ones have a message they want to get to them.
Yes, this is a great interview. I feel like you should be answering the questions.
Nah.
You're exactly right. We're doing blood drives, and the blood supply is really tight right now. So if anybody is kind of on the fence about whether or not they want to donate again, we hope that people would consider donating right now, because there is just with all the blood drives that have been canceled with Hurricane Matthew around the country, and for other reasons, there's just a real tight blood supply right now. And there's blood drives today in Faribault, and tomorrow there's one in Montgomery and one in Northfield. So check out the Red Cross website if you're interested in finding out where the nearest blood drive is, and please consider donating, because it's something that we can't have a safe and adequate blood supply without volunteer donors willing to roll up their sleeves and give a little bit to help people when they need it. So
yeah, we have that. I was going to say we have that information up on our website too. So
excellent. Thank you so much. And it's getting to be where it's usually it's pretty efficient, where they can collect a lot of information ahead of time, and you come in and especially if you have an appointment, you should be able to come in and donate fairly quickly, be back on your way. So yes, that's a very active program. People recognize that as something that we do throughout southeast Minnesota, and we are actually one of the strongest parts of the country here in the Midwest. We donate a lot of blood, and that is good because we can use that to help patients here at our local hospitals, where in Minnesota we supply the blood for 70% of the hospitals and clinics in Minnesota. So it's really critical here, but it's also something that we can ship elsewhere, so that when they have to cancel 40 blood drives in North Carolina because of a hurricane, they don't have to worry that their hospitals aren't going to have blood. We can ship it there, and it can be used where it's needed. So that's a very critical need right now.
Yeah, I read in...
you mentioned... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I read in one of your news releases recently that you need to collect 14,000 donations every day.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible because as the Red Cross, we collect... it's around 40% of the nation's blood supply. So that's just a huge obligation that we have to hospitals and clinics to make sure that they have those blood products that they need. And really, the way medical technology is changing, I think it's less and less frequent that they want whole blood products, and much more likely that they want a component of the blood and a specific type match, for a patient, because that's better for the patient. So we have opportunities to collect platelets. We have opportunities to do double red cells, and those are things that can be just super valuable for people who need that particular component, as opposed to the whole blood, which is also very critical. But needs are changing and evolving as medical advances continue. So
you can get blood today at Bernie's Grill, downtown Faribault.
Exactly.
Until noon is when it gets underway, till 6 today.
Yep, noon to 6 today. That'd be a perfect opportunity.
The American Legion in Dodge Center tomorrow from 1 until 7. The American Legion in Montgomery, you mentioned, from 1 until 7 tomorrow. Those are some of the upcoming blood drives in our area. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. Also, Northfield, as you mentioned, is having a blood drive at the Senior Center tomorrow.
The Senior Center.
1 until 7. And at St. Olaf College later this week on Wednesday and Thursday in the Buntrock Commons building there on the St. Olaf campus. I was just thinking they should have a blood drive organized for the big St. Olaf Carleton football game, which is this Saturday.
Sometimes they do try to do that. Whenever there's a large group of people together, it's a good time. Actually, one of the best blood drives here in Minnesota is the State Fair.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody realizes that, but that the great Minnesota get together, and you get that many people together, and you get some good recruiters out there, volunteers talking to people about giving blood, and we collect a lot of blood during that week. So
the last few years, I've been involved for a number of years with our Relay for Life American Cancer Society stroll, and we've had a blood drive here during the stroll the last few years, and it's gone very well. I'm very pleased to make. Yeah, that's awesome. That's
great.
So the thing most famous for these days, lately, unfortunately, has been flood relief in our area.
Unfortunately. Yes, we had a pretty busy time period for a couple weeks where we were having a lot of folks reaching out to us, and we were doing a lot of work with our emergency managers and trying to make sure that communities who needed help had our services available to them. We did some feeding where there were a couple communities that were doing some sandbagging, and we provided some meals for them. And then once the floodwaters recede, we have services available then to help people with cleanup, and sometimes we can provide financial assistance depending on how much water they had or what sort of damage they had in their homes. So we actually had the opportunity on the 6th and 7th of October to open what we call a MARC, which stands for a Multi-Agency Resource Center. And we did that in Waseca because we had such a large number of calls and recorded damage coming from that area. So we reached out to a few other organizations and established this multi-agency resource center for a couple of days. So that allowed individuals who'd had damage from the floodwaters or sewage to come in and talk with the Red Cross, but also meet with public health. The South Central Human Relations Center was there. Minnesota Valley Action Council was there. Minnesota Prairie County Alliance was there, and Lutheran Social Services were there. So all providing, services that are either complementary or a unique service that no one else can provide. And people could meet with all those different agencies in one place as opposed to trying to track them all down themselves. And we had a great response from the community. We also handed out a lot of our Red Cross cleanup kits, which are buckets that have scrub brushes and cleaning solutions and all kinds of other helpful supplies. We actually, over the course of those couple of days, we handed out over 160 cleanup kits and a bunch of other additional miscellaneous supplies like extra garbage bags and gloves and masks, those sorts of things. We had meals and snacks that we provided during that time period, so lots of people were able to come in, meet with folks who could potentially help them have a meal or grab some bottled water while they were there. And then we also had some casework happening, Red Cross casework happening, where we were having some of the folks meet with some of our caseworkers if they had significant water in their home or had something happen like, the basement wall collapsed or something really significant. where their home is considered having had major damage or having been destroyed. And we have financial assistance that is available for those types of cases. So we had a pretty good response from people to make sure that we met with or provided service for those folks. So over the course of those 2 days, believe it or not, over 250 households registered at the mark, and a number of them were ones that we were able to assist, and then also we were able to give good information through these other agencies that were present as well. So hopefully, if anyone who is listening to this is saying, I didn't know about that, or I wish I had known, I wish my family member or friend had been, involved in that, it's not too late to call our office and find out if there's something that we can still help do. We're still telling the stories, and trying to make the case for emergency assistance from FEMA. So we're trying to help the emergency managers gather that information and make sure that they have their strongest possible case to try to get additional resources available for people. So if anyone thinks that they missed this and would like to have been included, we hope they'll give our office a call, and we can still get a record of that house and the damage that and more importantly how it impacted people, because whenever we can make a very strong case for how people are impacted by these types of situations, and that helps the authorities make good decisions to help the people recover.
And you had a lot of locations too. I know my hometown.
We did.
I grew up in Spring Valley. I know they had some flooding issues down that way.
Right, we did. Yeah, we actually there was 2 communities where the damage kind of centered our activity, and that was in Waseca and then also in Albert Lea. But you're exactly right. There are multiple communities where lots of people had water in their homes, and where we were getting calls from people saying, is there anything you can do to help? And so, yeah, I think overall it was probably 20 different towns we had represented, with people calling us and trying to find out what to do next. And so thankfully we have volunteers who are excellent caseworkers, and they returned every single one of those calls and made sure that we connected with people. And if there were issues that we could help with, again, it's our emergency managers that we work most closely with, because that's their job, to make sure their community is prepared for an emergency, but they can't do it alone, and just like we can't do it alone. So they rely on us to help them if it becomes necessary to open a shelter or provide meals, and we rely on them to tell us when it's safe for our volunteers to be out and about. Some of the roads, if their roads are flooded, we aren't going to send volunteers into that area until it's safe for them to be there. So we rely on emergency management to help us decide when it's good for us to be there and how we can support their efforts, and if they have needs or issues that we can help with, we hope that we can be one of those organizations that they rely on, along with many others. There's many voluntary organizations that have a role to play in disaster. And certainly the Salvation Army is a great partner and was very visible in many of our communities as well, helping support sandbaggers and helping feed people and provide cleaning supplies, and a number of other organizations that step up and step in when it's time to help out people, at a really time of crisis. So we're fortunate to be in a community in this part of the country where lots of people step up and help out, help each other when the time comes. And we're grateful for the response that we had from volunteers and partners who helped us out as well.
Melanie Tschida is the executive director of the Southeastern Minnesota chapter, the American Red Cross. I'm guessing we're about as far west as you go, right?
This chapter goes over to Mankato, almost to Mankato, and then Mankato covers everything from there over to South Dakota. So you're right. Okay. You're right on the line there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's not a bad thing. I'm just, trying to get a sense of your territory.
The picture, yep.
I will say our emergency management director here in the city of Faribault, Dusty Dienst, when we were dealing with flooding issues here, I had mentioned, do you miss the Red Cross office here? And he said, they're very good about being able to we're able to get a hold of them. He said, we have the information. It's not a problem, he said. So
Good. That's great. That's what we hope. We're working hard to try to be accessible to people. It is a real shift if they're used to having a permanent office in a community, but we have a really dedicated team of volunteers who are our leaders in our communities, and certainly staff that put in some pretty long hours too, making sure that everybody was connected and contacted and knew how to reach us and knew we were available to support whatever they needed. So
I mentioned earlier that one of your duties also is to get a hold of military personnel. It used to be someone here locally, I know, that did that. Do they still do that, or do you do that out of your office, or how does that work?
So we've really encouraged individuals in the military and military personnel when they have emergencies. We have a system now with an 800 number and caseworkers who are full-time caseworkers on duty all the time to do those emergency cases. So we have an 800 number that we promote, and that's the number that all of our cases really go through. And so what our local volunteers, the ones who used to provide that emergency message, they aren't doing that anymore because the message really is done through that 800 number. But our local volunteers do some follow-up. So after an individual has had a Red Cross message delivered, we do some follow-up within the next couple of days to connect back with that family and say, did the message get delivered to your satisfaction? Was there anything else that we could have done better? And what else can we help you with? Are there other needs that are going on because of this situation, particularly when it's a sudden type of situation where someone's hospitalized or someone has passed away? That's a pretty big thing that family is going through. And sometimes we're aware of other resources that either we can provide through the military aid societies, or that local resources that they may not be aware of that can help them through this situation. So we're thankful for the volunteers who are willing to make those follow-up calls and connect people with additional resources and just provide that extra local touch to make sure that if they have other things that they need, that we're there to try to help them through that.
Yep, you help people when they've gone through a tragedy like a fire or a natural disaster, a tornado or anything, and I'm sure that you need more volunteers. So how do I volunteer, Melanie?
We do. Yes, we're always looking for additional volunteers, particularly in our communities outside of Rochester, because that's where we really are looking to strengthen our presence. So the best way to get started is just go to the Red Cross website, which is redcross.org. If you want to click on Get Involved, that'll start taking you down a path to fill out an online application. That's really the first step. And then once that application's submitted, and all that really asks you for is your name and contact information and a general idea of what you might be interested in doing. Once we get that, it goes to our volunteer coordinator, and they will reach out and invite you to have a conversation and further determine, if you're interested in helping at a blood drive, or if you want to deploy to help out in a large disaster in another part of the country, or if you're willing to help locally for a house fire, another type of disaster in your own community. We ask some of those sorts of questions and then get you started down a path to get the right training. Much of it is online, so you don't have to necessarily drive somewhere to get the training that you need. But we would coordinate effort to get you together with a group of people that do the work that you're interested in doing. And then it's just a matter of plugging in the gaps. So if it's a schedule that we have for folks who are on call, for example, or if there's specific tasks that you want to help with. Sometimes we have events coming up where we're really working to recruit local volunteers. For example, we have an upcoming smoke alarm installation event. It's actually in Red Wing next Saturday, where we will be installing smoke alarms for individuals who don't have them. And that's a great hands-on project. Doesn't require a huge commitment. It's one day for a couple hours, but it feels really good when you're done to know that 40 or 50 homes are safer. Those families are safer and much more likely to get out of their house if they have a house fire. So sometimes the volunteer projects are kind of one-time things like that, and sometimes it's more getting involved and getting some training and becoming a leader within a particular team and really helping out on a longer-term basis, which is we need it. We need everybody at every level, so we'll take them all.
So how do we get one of these smoke alarm efforts at our community?
Yeah, so we're really working through our local fire chiefs and helping to sort of determine where the best partners are that we can work with. We don't do these events alone. We work with our fire departments, and sometimes there's additional community groups that we can look at getting involved with, or sometimes there have been even some large employers who've said, hey, we're going to release a bunch of our staff that day and allow them to volunteer on the clock, so to speak, because that's how important we feel this is. So we're just we continue to put it out there and just assess what are the resources in each community, and truly we look at the data from the fire department to say where are the fires occurring. What are the neighborhoods where we would most benefit from doing these types of installation events, because they're having a lot of fires to begin with. And if we can really target those areas, we really will make a big impact. So we have really every community in southeast Minnesota is somewhere on our list.
Okay.
Just depends, on where the fires are occurring and what the resources are in that community for us to be able to bring the alarms to to each community. But we've been moving it around. We've done a number of them over the last couple of years, and this is not a program that's going to be over anytime soon. It's really a long-term commitment of our organization to continue to do installations throughout the country, really, so that we can really make an impact. Our goal is to reduce deaths and injuries from home fires by 25% over the next several years. So it's going to require a lot of smoke alarms to do that.
We went just a tad over here, Melanie, but thanks for joining me this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet. You're in tune to KDHLAM, Faribault, Minnesota.